He had money, power, and everything he could ever want, until he saw something he just couldn't get out of his head. A poor little girl was carrying notebooks filled with drawings of food instead of an actual lunch. The reason behind these drawings is heartbreaking and exposes a harsh reality. If this beautiful story of resilience and love has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now, Robert Miller adjusted the gold watch on his wrist as he walked through the streets of downtown Manhattan. At 52, the real estate mogul had built an empire that afforded him luxuries most people only dreamed of. On that Tuesday morning, he was leaving yet another business meeting at his law firm, where he had just closed a $2 million land deal. His impeccable Italian suit and genuine leather shoes contrasted with the grit of the side street he'd decided to walk down, a different route than usual to avoid the traffic. Robert's life followed a mathematically precise routine. Wake up. At 5 a.m., gym, endless meetings, business dinners, and fall asleep thinking about numbers. There was no room for the unexpected in his schedule, much less for feelings that didn't generate a profit. Divorced for 5 years, he maintained relationships that were superficial and practical. His only companions were financial reports and spreadsheets that demonstrated the constant growth of his net worth. It was when he turned the corner onto a side street near Bryant Park that something caught his eye. Sitting on the steps of a closed shop, a little girl was intensely focused on something in her lap. Robert, on an impulse he couldn't explain, slowed his pace. The child looked to be about 6 years old, wearing a faded pink dress that had been mended several times, and her brown hair was tied in 2 uneven pigtails. What really made him stop was the seriousness with which she handled an old notebook, drawing with a pencil so small it barely fit in her hand. "Excuse me," Robert said, crouching down to her level. "What are you drawing there?" Anna lifted her eyes, 2 large brown eyes that seemed to carry more weight than they should for a child her age. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wasn't used to talking to well-dressed strangers. Then, shyly, she turned the notebook so he could see. Robert felt a strange pang in his chest when he saw the drawing. It was a complete meal: a steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, a side salad, and even a glass of milk. Every detail was meticulously drawn, with imaginary colors she had created using only the graphite pencil. The lines showed a care and attention that didn't match the girl's age. "That's beautiful," he said, genuinely impressed. "Do you like to draw food?" Anna nodded but said nothing. Robert noticed she was holding the notebook tightly, as if it were her most precious possession. Curious, he asked if he could see the other pages. The girl hesitated again, but then began to flip through the notebook. Each page revealed a new dish: spaghetti and meatballs, pizza with lots of toppings, a big juicy hamburger, chocolate cake, a variety of fruits, all drawn with the same obsessive precision, as if they were black and white photographs. "Where did you learn to draw like that?" Robert asked, increasingly intrigued. "By myself," Anna answered in a voice that was almost a whisper. "I see it on the TV at the corner bar, or when I walk past the restaurants." Robert looked around and realized they were in a commercial area with a few diners and restaurants. The girl continued to flip through the notebook, and he noticed there were dozens of drawings, all depicting different types of food. There were no drawings of people, animals, houses, or toys, just food. "Does your mom know you're here?" he asked, starting to worry. "She's working. I'm waiting for her to finish her shift at the store," Anna pointed to a nearby office building. "She told me to stay right here and not move." Robert checked his watch. It was 2 in the afternoon, a time when most kids would be in school or having lunch at home. Something wasn't right about this situation. The girl seemed polite and intelligent, but there was a sadness in her eyes that bothered him deeply. "Have you had lunch today?" The question slipped out before he could think better of it. Anna shook her head no, then quickly focused back on her drawings, as if trying to escape the topic. Robert felt a knot form in his stomach. It was as if a piece of a terrible puzzle was clicking into place in his mind. "What about yesterday? Did you eat well yesterday?" The girl shrugged, a gesture that tried to seem nonchalant, but revealed much more than she intended. Robert looked at the drawings again, and a shocking realization began to take shape. These weren't just a child's drawings. They were the dreams of someone who knew hunger. "Anna!" a woman's voice called from the entrance of the building. A woman of about 34 was walking quickly toward them. She wore a blue cleaning uniform and looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her hands showed signs of hard labor. "Mom!" Anna quickly closed her notebook and stood up. "I'm sorry, sir," said Mary Davis, out of breath. "I hope my daughter wasn't bothering you." "Anna, how many times have I told you not to talk to strangers?" Robert stood up too, adjusting his suit. "Don't worry. She wasn't bothering me at all. In fact, I was admiring her drawings. Your daughter is very talented." Mary looked at Robert suspiciously, as if trying to decipher his intentions. "Talented?" she repeated, not understanding. "The drawings of food, they're very detailed for a child her age." Mary's face turned red. She pulled Anna by the hand, a little more forcefully than necessary. "Sorry for any trouble, sir. We have to go." Robert watched the two of them hurry away, Anna clutching the notebook to her chest like a treasure. Something about that scene disturbed him deeply. The entire way back to his office, he couldn't get the image of those meticulous food drawings and the little girl's sad eyes out of his head. That night, in his luxury apartment, on the Upper East Side, Robert ate dinner alone, as always. The plate of grilled salmon with vegetables was perfectly prepared by his housekeeper, but he barely touched the food. He couldn't stop thinking about Anna and why a 6-year-old child would draw food with such obsession. It was then that Robert made a decision that would completely change the course of his life. The next day he would return to that street to better understand what he had witnessed. Something in those drawings was calling him back, an urgency he didn't comprehend but couldn't ignore. Without knowing it, he was about to discover a truth that would shake all his certainties about the world. The next morning, Robert cancelled 3 important meetings. For the first time in years, something other than business occupied his thoughts. He arrived at the street near Bryant Park at 9 o'clock, but he didn't find Anna where he had seen her the day before. He walked around the area, watching the bustle of workers arriving for another day in the offices and shops. That's when he spotted Mary Davis, leaving the same office building, still wearing her cleaning uniform. She looked even more tired than the day before, with dark circles under her eyes and her shoulders slumped under the weight of a grueling routine. Robert hesitated for a moment, then approached her. "Excuse me, Mom," he said, tipping an imaginary hat. "Do you remember me? I spoke with your daughter yesterday about her drawings." Mary stopped and looked at him with suspicion. "I remember. What do you want?" "I'd like to talk to you about Anna. Can I buy you a coffee?" "I don't have time for coffee," she replied curtly. "I have to pick up my daughter from the neighbor's house and then get to my other job." "Another job?" Robert couldn't hide his surprise. Mary sighed as if she'd said more than she should have. "Sir, what do you really want? If this is about my daughter, forget it. She's a good girl." "No, it's nothing like that," Robert gestured quickly. "It's just, her drawings caught my attention. Can I ask you a question? Why does she only draw food?" Mary's face shut down completely. "That's none of your business. I'm sorry if I'm being intrusive, but I work in investments, and I've seen difficult situations. If you need help—" "Help?" Mary laughed bitterly. "What do you think we are? Beggars?" "I work, sir. I work very hard. I don't need a handout from anyone." Robert realized he had stepped on a landmine. "I didn't mean to offend. It's just that the girl—" "The girl what?" Mary's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and fear. "Just say what you mean. She was drawing food with so much detail, and when I asked if she'd had lunch, she said no." Mary was silent for a long moment. Her eyes filled with tears that she tried to hide by looking away. "You don't understand anything," she finally mumbled. "Then explain it to me. Maybe I can actually help." "Help?" She faced him again. "You, with your expensive suit and gold watch, are going to help me. Why? What do you want in return?" Robert felt disarmed by the direct question. "I don't want anything in return. It's just, I can't stop thinking about Anna since yesterday." Mary studied him for a few seconds, as if trying to read his true intentions. "My daughter draws food because we don't always have enough to eat at home. Are you satisfied? She sees things." On TV, in restaurants, and she draws them to pretend she's eating. The confession hit Robert like a punch to the gut. You're going hungry? It's not like that, Mary quickly defended herself. I always find a way. Always. My daughter never goes to bed without eating something. It might just be a piece of bread with margarine, but she eats. And you? Mary looked away. I'm a grown-up. I can handle it. Robert began to understand the scale of the situation. You skip meals so Anna can eat. That's not your problem, she answered defensively, but her voice trembled. How many jobs do you have? 3. I clean offices overnight, work for a family in the afternoons, and clean a store in the evenings. Anna stays with Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor, when she's not in school. Robert did a quick calculation. If Mary worked 3 different jobs, she was probably earning very little at each one and still couldn't properly support her family. And Anna's father? What father? Mary's tone grew more bitter. He disappeared when he found out I was pregnant. Never saw him again. The businessman felt increasingly uncomfortable, not with the conversation, but with the reality being revealed. Mom, can I make you a proposal? What kind of proposal? The suspicion returned to Mary's eyes. I need someone to handle the cleaning for my office and my apartment. I would pay a fixed salary, a full-time W-2 job, so you could quit your other jobs. Mary was silent, processing the offer. Why would you do that? Robert hesitated. Because Anna reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? That there are other people in the world besides me. Mary looked at him for a long moment. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, it's a job. An honest job with a decent wage. And what if you get tired of your good deed after a week? What if you decide you don't want to help anymore? Then I'll be worse off than before because I'll have quit my other jobs. The question revealed a bitter wisdom acquired through many disappointments. Robert realized Mary had learned to distrust easy promises. We can sign a contract, with guarantees. You barely know me. Why would you trust me to work in your home? Robert smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Because any mother who goes hungry to feed her daughter and still manages to keep her dignity is someone I can trust. Mary felt the tears well up again. Anna, does she really draw food because she's hungry? I believe so. The drawings are too detailed. It's as if she's trying to commit to memory flavors she barely knows. My God, Mary covered her face with her hands. I thought she didn't notice. I thought I was hiding it. Kids notice more than we think, Robert said softly. She never complained, never asked for anything. She just draws. Robert felt the weight of the discovery. Anna didn't draw out of artistic talent or childish whim. She drew out of necessity, as a way of coping with a reality too harsh for her age. I need to think about your offer, Mary said, wiping her eyes. But first I have to go get Anna. She didn't have breakfast this morning because the milk ran out last night. That final piece of information was like a dagger to Robert's heart. While he had eaten a full breakfast in his luxurious apartment, Anna had woken up with nothing to eat, and yet she would probably pick up her notebook and continue drawing the meals she couldn't have. Can I walk with you? Robert asked. I'd like to speak with Anna again. Mary hesitated, but then nodded. But don't you make any promises to her that you don't intend to keep. My daughter has suffered enough. As they walked together through the streets of downtown Manhattan, Robert realized he was about to enter a world completely different from his own. A world where drawing food was a form of emotional survival, and where a 6-year-old girl had already learned to live with hunger in silence. What he didn't know was that Anna had drawn something different that morning, something that would completely change the course of this story. Mrs. Johnson's apartment was in a housing project in the Bronx, a steep walk up through narrow corridors where Robert had never set foot. As he walked beside Mary, he observed the simple brick buildings, the clothes hanging on makeshift lines, and the children playing in the street with toys made from scraps. The contrast with his world of skyscrapers and imported cars was jarring. This is it, Mary said, stopping in front of a small 2-room apartment. Mrs. Johnson looks after several kids during the day. She's one of the few people I trust. Robert could hear children's voices coming from inside. When Mary knocked, an older black woman of about 60 appeared, her warm smile fading when she saw the well-dressed stranger beside her neighbor. "Mary, who is this man?" Mrs. Johnson asked, protectively blocking the doorway. "It's complicated. He met Anna yesterday and wants to talk to her." Mrs. Johnson frowned. "Talk about what? I hope this isn't about Child Protective Services, because that little girl isn't going anywhere." "It's nothing like that," Robert said quickly. "I'm a businessman and I saw Anna's drawings. I wanted to better understand her talent." "Talent?" Mrs. Johnson laughed bitterly. "What talent? The girl draws food all day long, just sits there, quiet as a mouse, drawing meals she'll never eat. That's not talent, that's sadness." The old woman's words hit Robert like a slap in the face. "Can I see her?" Mrs. Johnson looked at Mary, who nodded hesitantly. "Anna," she called out, "your mum's here." The little girl came running, holding the same worn notebook. But when she saw Robert, she stopped abruptly and hid behind Mrs. Johnson. "Hi, Anna," Robert said, crouching down. "Remember me?" The girl nodded shyly, clutching the notebook to her chest. "Can I see what you drew today?" Anna looked at her mother, who gave a small gesture of approval. Slowly, she opened the notebook to a page Robert hadn't seen the day before. What he saw left him completely stunned. The drawing showed a man in a suit sitting at a table in an elegant restaurant, with several different dishes in front of him. But beside him, a small girl was looking through the window, just watching. The man was clearly based on Robert, with details that were surprising for a 6-year-old. "You drew me?" Robert asked, genuinely surprised. "I saw you yesterday," Anna said in her small voice. "You looked sad, too." "Sad? Why do you think I was sad?" "Because you were alone. People who are alone are sad, even when they have a lot of food." The girl's observation left Robert speechless. How had a 6-year-old captured something he didn't even consciously admit to himself? Mrs. Johnson came closer to see the drawing. "You little rascal, when did you see this man eating?" "Yesterday, after he left. I followed him from a distance and saw him go into that fancy restaurant on Madison Avenue. He ordered a lot of food, but he barely ate any of it." Mary turned pale. "Anna, how many times have I told you not to wander off by yourself?" "I stayed on the sidewalk, Mum. I just looked through the window." Robert felt a mix of emotions he couldn't identify. The girl had followed him and watched him eat alone at the restaurant he always went to when he worked late. She had captured his loneliness with a precision that frightened him. "What else? Do you draw, Anna?" he asked, trying to change the subject. The girl hesitated, then flipped the notebook to a page that made Robert swallow hard. It was a drawing of Mary passed out on the floor, with Anna crying beside her. In the corner of the page, written in shaky letters, were the words, "Mommy no eat 2 days." "Anna!" Mary snatched the notebook from her daughter's hands. "Why did you draw that?" "Because it happened last week. You fell in the kitchen, and I got scared." Mrs. Johnson shook her head sadly. "I told you to go to the clinic that day, Mary, but you're so stubborn." "I was fine." Mary defended herself, but her voice trembled. "I just got dizzy because it was hot." Robert watched the scene in silence, beginning to understand that the situation was far more serious than he had initially imagined. Anna didn't just draw food because of hunger. She was documenting a reality of extreme deprivation that included her mother fainting from lack of food. "Can I see the other pages?" Robert asked gently. Anna looked at her mother, who seemed embarrassed but nodded. The notebook revealed a chronological sequence of disturbing situations. Mary sleeping on the living room floor because she had sold the bed. Anna eating only dry bread for several days in a row, the two of them sharing a single meal. But there was something else. Among the drawings of hunger and hardship, Robert noticed images of affection. Mary brushing her daughter's hair, the two of them hugging while watching TV at the neighbor's house, Anna helping her mum hang laundry on the roof. "Your mum loves you very much, doesn't she?" Robert commented. "She's the best mom in the world," Anna answered immediately. "She always gives me everything. Even when she's hungry, she gives me her food." Robert looked at Mary, who had moved away and was crying silently against the wall. Mrs. Johnson approached him. "That woman works herself to death to raise that girl right," the neighbor whispered. But she's not making it. It gets worse every day. She really did pass out last week, just like the girl Drew. I offered her food, but she's too proud to take it. What about social services? Doesn't the government offer help? They do, but it's not much and it takes forever. Besides, Mary's afraid they'll take the girl if they find out how bad things really are. Robert felt the weight of responsibility growing on his shoulders. He had discovered not just a hungry child, but an entire family in a state of quiet desperation. Anna, he addressed the girl again, if you could have any food in the world right now, what would you choose? The girl thought for a moment. I'd want a big, full plate for my mum to eat, so she won't be weak anymore. The answer broke Robert's heart. Even while hungry, Anna's first concern was for her mother's well-being. And, for you? For me, I'd want that cake I saw in the bakery the other day, but only after my mum ate a lot. Robert made a decision in that moment. Mary, he called out, I need you to seriously consider my offer, and I need you to think about it today, because Anna can't wait any longer. Mary approached, wiping her eyes. What do you mean? I mean your daughter is documenting a reality that could have serious consequences for both of your health. If you pass out again, who's going to take care of her? I won't pass. Out again, Mary answered defensively. How can you be sure? You work 3 jobs and barely eat. Mrs. Johnson intervened. Mary, for God's sake, listen to the man. I can't watch Anna all the time. I've already got 5 other kids here. Just then, Anna walked over to Robert and tugged on the sleeve of his suit. Mister, she said quietly, can you stay and have lunch with us today? Robert looked around the simple apartment, knowing there probably wasn't any lunch for anyone. Of course I can, but let me contribute the food, okay? Anna nodded excitedly, but Robert noticed the look of panic that crossed Mary's face. It was clear that the offer, though well-intentioned, made her uncomfortable. It was then that Mrs. Johnson whispered something in Mary's ear that made her face go completely pale. Robert realized something very serious had been said, something that would drastically change the course of the conversation. What did she say? Robert asked, noticing that Mary had gone completely pale after hearing Mrs. Johnson's whisper. Mary shook her head as if trying to push away a terrible thought. Nothing important. Mary, Mrs. Johnson insisted, you have to tell him. This can't. Go on. What are you talking about? Robert felt that something very serious was being left out. Anna tugged on Robert's suit sleeve again. Mister, the lady from the building where my mom works said something mean yesterday. Anna, be quiet, Mary scolded her daughter with a harshness Robert hadn't seen before. But the girl continued, with the cruel innocence of children. She said that if my mum can't pay next month's rent, we're going to have to leave our home. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert looked at Mary, who had covered her face with her hands in shame. Is that true? He asked softly. I'm 3 months behind, Mary admitted, her voice choked with emotion. The landlord of the tenement building where we live said she'll give us 1 more week. After that? After that, what? After that, we'll have to sleep on the street, Mrs. Johnson finished with bitterness. And a 6-year-old girl can't sleep on the street, Robert. Do you understand what that means? Robert understood perfectly. If Mary lost her home, Anna would be taken by Child Protective Services. Mother and daughter would be separated. How much is the rent? Robert asked. It's not just the rent, Mary mumbled. It's 3 months of back rent plus late fees plus next month. It's almost $1,200. Robert did a quick calculation. For him, $1,200 was what he spent on a single meal at his favorite restaurants. For Mary, it represented 4 months of grueling work. I can pay that right now, Robert offered immediately. No. Mary stood up abruptly. I won't take handouts. I'd rather they take my daughter than become a beggar. The violent reaction surprised Robert. But if it's to keep Anna with you, listen to me, Mary approached him, her eyes flashing with anger. I've already lost everything in my life. I lost my parents when I was a teenager. I lost the man I thought loved me. I lost the chance to get an education. I've lost jobs. The only thing I have left is my dignity. And my dignity is not for sale. Robert was taken aback by the intensity of her response. I wasn't trying to buy anything. I just wanted to help. Help? Mary laughed bitterly. You show up here in your expensive suit, offering money like it's breadcrumbs for pigeons, and you call that help? Where were you yesterday when my daughter went to bed without dinner? Where were you last week when I fainted from hunger? I didn't know you existed, Robert answered honestly. Exactly. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. People like you only see poor people when it's convenient for you to feel good about yourselves. Mary's words cut Robert deeply because there was truth in them. For 52 years, he had walked past homeless people, street kids, and struggling families without ever stopping to help. Anna, sensing the tension, approached her mother. Mommy, don't be mad at the mister. He's nice. Nice? Mary knelt to her daughter's level. Anna, rich people aren't nice to poor people for free. They always want something in return. Robert felt as if he'd been slapped. What could I possibly want from a 6-year-old girl? Mary stared at him. I don't know. But they always want something. Mrs. Johnson intervened. Mary, you're being unfair. The man seems sincere. Seeming and being are two different things, Mrs. Johnson. How many times have I been promised a steady job, a regular paycheck, benefits, and in the end? Robert began to understand that Mary had developed a deep-seated distrust based on many past disappointments. What kind of false promises have been made to you? Mary hesitated, then sighed. There's a man in the neighborhood, Mr. Marcus. He's well off, owns an auto parts store. Last year, he offered me a job as a saleswoman, said he'd pay well, that he'd help me get out of this situation. And what happened? He wanted me to be nice to him after hours. When I refused, he fired me that same week. I was out of work for 2 months after that. Robert felt sick to his stomach. This man tried to assault you. He didn't try. He made it very clear that was the price for his help. A favor for a favor is what he said. And he wasn't the only one, Mrs. Johnson added sadly. That's why Mary is afraid of men who offer help. Robert now fully understood Mary's distrust. She had learned that men in positions of power often exploited vulnerable women. I can understand why you don't trust me, Robert said, but I can prove that my intentions are honest. How? Robert thought for a moment. I can hire you through an HR company with a registered contract, witnesses, legal guarantees, and I can pay the back rent as a loan that you can pay back through deductions from your salary. Mary looked at him in surprise. Why would you do all that? Because Anna made me remember who I was before I got rich. Who were you? Robert lowered his eyes. A poor boy who also knew hunger. The revelation left everyone in silence. Anna approached Robert with curiosity. Did you used to draw food too? She asked. Robert smiled sadly. I didn't draw it, but I dreamed about it every night. And how did you get rich? I studied hard, worked hard, and got lucky, but along the way I forgot where I came from. Mary still seemed skeptical. And why do you want to remember now? Because yesterday, when I saw Anna's drawings, I realized I had become the exact type of person who used to walk past me when I was a kid and pretend not to see me. You were hungry when you were a kid? Anna asked, her eyes wide. I was. My mother raised me and my 2 brothers by herself. Sometimes we'd go days eating, nothing but flour and water. Where are your brothers now? Mrs. Johnson asked. Robert was silent for a long moment. I don't know. I lost contact with them when I started making money. I thought they would hold me back. The confession hung in the air like an accusation. Robert had abandoned his own family in exchange for financial success. Is that why you want to help us? Mary asked. To feel better about abandoning your brothers? Maybe, Robert admitted honestly. But does that make the help any less real? Anna tugged on her mother's dress. Mommy, if the mister was hungry like me, then he understands. Mary looked at her daughter, then at Robert, struggling with a difficult decision. If I accept your help, how will I know you won't just disappear when you get tired of playing the Good Samaritan? You won't know, Robert answered. You'll have to trust me, just like I'll have to trust that you won't run off with the money if I pay the rent in advance. It was then that Anna opened her notebook again and showed a drawing none of them had seen yet. It was a table with a lot of food, but this time there were 3 people sitting there, her, Mary, and Robert, all eating together, all smiling. When did you draw this? Robert asked. "This morning. I dreamed that we became a family." Anna's innocent drawing revealed a hope that none of the adults had dared to express, but it also revealed something more unsettling, a 6-year-old child dreaming of a stranger as a father figure, which showed just how much she missed a stable male presence in her life. Mary stared for a long moment at Anna's drawing, where the three of them appeared as a happy family sharing a meal. When she looked up, Robert saw silent tears streaming down her face. "I accept your help," she finally said, her voice choked with emotion, "but on 2 conditions." Robert nodded, waiting. "First, I want a detailed contract, with all of your obligations and mine in writing. Second, if at any point I feel that you are trying to take advantage of me or Anna, I will leave immediately, even if it means going back to the street." "I completely agree," Robert replied without hesitation. "We can go to my lawyer today to get everything prepared." Anna hugged her mother's leg. "Does that mean we don't have to leave our home?" "It means we're going to try not to, sweetie," Mary answered, ever cautious. Mrs. Johnson sighed in relief. "Thank God. I was losing sleep thinking about you two on the street." Robert took out his cell phone. "I'll call my lawyer right now. We can sort out the rent issue today." But just as he was dialing, Mary's phone rang. She answered with a worried expression that quickly turned to panic. "Yes, Mrs. Clark." "What do you mean, fired? But I've never missed a day." "No. Please, I need this job." Robert and Mrs. Johnson watched as Mary pleaded into the phone, her voice growing more and more desperate. "Please, give me a chance to explain. I know I was a little late yesterday, but it was because Anna was sick." "Yes, ma'am, I understand." When she hung up the phone, Mary was trembling. "What happened?" Robert asked. "I lost my job with the family," she answered, her voice shaky. "My boss said she was dissatisfied with my performance and no longer required my services." "But why?" "Because yesterday I was 15 minutes late. Anna had woken up with a stomachache and I had to take care of her before I could leave for work." Mrs. Johnson shook her head in disgust. "Those rich people have no heart. 15 minutes because of a sick child." Robert felt a pang of guilt. He himself had fired employees for much less. "How much did you make at that job?" $300 a month, Mary replied, doing the math in her head. "Now, I only have the other 2 jobs. That won't even be enough for food, let alone rent." Anna tugged on Robert's suit sleeve again. "Are you still going to help us even though Mommy lost her job?" "Of course I am," Robert answered immediately, but he noticed the look of suspicion return to Mary's eyes. "Now you're going to think you need to help me even more," she said bitterly. "You'll see me as some poor, completely dependent woman." "That's not it," Robert protested. "It's just a bad coincidence." "Coincidence?" Mary laughed humorlessly. "I lose a job on the very day I accept help from a stranger. What a convenient coincidence." Robert didn't immediately understand what she meant, but Mrs. Johnson intervened. "Mary, you're being paranoid. How could this man have any influence over your old boss?" "I don't know," Mary admitted, "but rich people know each other. Maybe he talked to someone." "I don't even know where you worked," Robert protested. "And even if I did, why would I do something like that?" "To make me more dependent, so that I'd have no choice but to accept your help." The accusation left Robert stunned. "Do you really believe I would do that?" Mary looked him in the eyes for a long moment. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Anna, sensing the growing tension, opened her notebook again and began to draw quickly. When she finished, she showed it to the adults. It was a simple drawing, herself in the middle, holding the hands of Mary and Robert, with everyone smiling. "Why did you draw that now?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Because when people get mad, I draw happy things to remember how nice it is when nobody is fighting," Anna replied with the innocent wisdom of children. The drawing had the desired effect. The tension in the room visibly lessened. Robert knelt in front of Mary. "Ma'am, I understand your distrust. If I were you, I'd be suspicious too, but I swear on my mother's memory that I had nothing to do with you losing your job." "Is your mom gone?" Anna asked. Robert nodded sadly. "She passed away when I was 25. She never got to see me become successful." "Would she be proud of you now?" Anna's question was innocent, but it hit Robert like an arrow. He hesitated. I don't know. I think she'd be proud of the money I made, but sad about the person I became in the process. What person did you become? A person who forgot where he came from, a person who went years without helping anyone. Mary watched the conversation in silence. Gradually, her expression of distrust gave way to something resembling understanding. Do you have a family now? She asked. No. I never remarried after my divorce. I don't have any children. I live alone. Why? Robert thought about the question. I think because I learned to only trust myself. I thought other people would just hold me back or use me. Like I'm thinking you're going to use me, Mary observed. Exactly. We both learned to be distrustful for the same reasons. Anna looked at the two adults. So you're alike? I guess so, Robert smiled. Your mum and I both learned that the world can be a cruel place. The difference is that I got lucky and managed to get out of poverty. And now you want to help those who are still there? Mary asked. I want to try, if you'll let me. At that moment, Robert's phone rang. It was his personal assistant. Mr. Miller, you missed the meeting with the shopping mall investors. They're furious. They said if you don't show up within the hour, they're cancelling. The contract. Robert looked at Anna, who was watching him with expectation, and then at Mary, who clearly needed to resolve the rent issue that very day. Tell them they'll have to reschedule, Robert replied. Sir, it's a $5 million contract. Robert looked again at Anna and her mother. So be it, reschedule for tomorrow. He hung up the phone under Mary's surprised gaze. Did you just lose $5 million because of us? I didn't lose it. I just delayed it. Some things are more important than money. What things? Robert smiled, looking at Anna. Making sure a 6-year-old girl doesn't have to draw food anymore because she's hungry. It was at that moment that something unexpected happened. Anna tore a page from her notebook, the one where she had drawn the man alone in the restaurant, and handed it to Robert. Why are you giving me this? He asked. Because you're not alone anymore, and when you're not alone, you don't need to keep the sad drawings. Robert held the paper, feeling the symbolic weight of the gesture. A 6-year-old child had just taught him a lesson about loneliness and human connection that had taken him 52 years to learn. But when he looked at the drawing again, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. In the corner of the page, in small letters, Anna had written, "The good man who will save Mommy." The responsibility of those words weighed on Robert as never before. He wasn't just a businessman offering help. He had become the hope of a desperate child and a mother at the end of her rope. 3 days later, Robert was sitting in his lawyer's office, Dr. Frank Reynolds, trying to explain a situation that even he didn't fully understand. "Let me get this straight," the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. "You want to hire a woman you met 3 days ago who recently lost a job to work in your home and office for a salary of $3,000 a month." "That's right," Robert confirmed. "Robert, that's 3 times the going rate for a cleaning lady. She's not just a cleaning lady, she's a mother fighting to raise her daughter with dignity." Dr. Reynolds sighed. "You're being emotional. This isn't how you operate in business." "Maybe it's time I started operating differently," Robert replied. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Johnson's apartment, Mary waited nervously with Anna in her lap. The girl had spent the night drawing strange things, Robert disappearing, her and her mother crying, an empty house. "Why are you drawing sad things again?" Mary asked. "Because I'm scared," Anna answered honestly. "What if the mister changes his mind? What if he forgets about us?" Mary was scared too, but she tried not to show it. "If he forgets, we'll figure something out. We always do." "But this time is different," Anna insisted. "This time I really believed things were going to get better." Her daughter's words broke Mary's heart. Anna had developed hope, and broken hope was more painful than never having hoped at all. Mary's phone rang. It was Robert. "Mary, there's a problem. My lawyer is putting up roadblocks with the contract. He thinks the salary is too high and wants to run checks that could take weeks." Mary's heart sank. "Checks?" "Background checks, references, criminal history, things I told him weren't necessary, but he's insisting. And what if those checks show bad things?" "Like what?" Mary hesitated. I've been arrested before. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Why? Robert finally asked. Theft. When Anna was a baby, she was sick and I didn't have money for her medicine. I took a box of cough syrup from a pharmacy. They caught me on the way out. Robert felt his stomach clench. How long were you in jail? 3 months. Anna stayed with Mrs. Johnson. When I got out, no one would hire me. So that's why you're worried about the checks? That's why. If your lawyer finds out, he'll say I can't be trusted. Robert looked at Dr. Reynolds, who was shuffling papers on his desk. Mary, I'll handle this. Can you trust me? I don't have a choice, she replied bitterly. When Robert hung up, Dr. Reynolds looked at him. From your expression, there are complications. Frank, I need you to draw up the contract today, with no background checks. Robert, that's irresponsible. This woman could have any kind of past. She has a past of extreme poverty, that's all I need to know. And what if she steals from you? What if she has an addiction? What if she's unstable? And what if she's just a desperate mother trying to raise her daughter? Dr. Reynolds sighed. You're making a mistake, but it's your money. I'll prepare the contract, but with protective clauses. Meanwhile, in the housing project, a parallel conversation was taking place. Mr. Marcus, the man who had tried to harass Mary, was talking to another resident. Did you see Mary walking around with that rich guy in the suit? Marcus commented. Yeah, I saw. They say he's going to give her a job. A job? Marcus laughed maliciously. I know what kind of job a rich man gives a pretty desperate woman. Don't talk about Mary like that. She's a decent woman. A decent woman who's been arrested for theft. A decent woman who turned down my honest help. Your honest help? You wanted her to prostitute herself. I wanted to trade a favor for a favor. Now she's going to do the same thing with this guy just for more money. The conversation was overheard by Mrs. Peterson, another of Mary's neighbors, who ran to tell her what she'd heard. Mary, people are talking bad about you and the rich man. What are they saying? Mr. Marcus is spreading it around that you're selling yourself to him. Mary felt anger rise in her throat. That bastard can't get over the fact that I rejected his disgusting offers. Do you think these rumors could get back to your new boss? Mary turned pale. If Robert heard rumors about her, he might change his mind about helping. That afternoon, Robert arrived at Mrs. Johnson's apartment with a folder of documents and a tense expression. I got the contract, he announced, but I need to talk to you about a few things. Anna sensed the tension and moved closer to her mother, hugging her leg. What kind of things? Mary asked, bracing for the worst. First, my lawyer insisted on some protective clauses. If there are any problems, either party can terminate the contract with 1 week's notice. I understand. Second, he wants you to start by working only part-time for a month, as a trial period. Mary felt relief mixed with disappointment. Does that mean the salary will be half too? No, the salary is the full amount, but you'll only work 4 hours a day for the first month. Why? Robert hesitated. Because I told him you need time to take care of Anna. The consideration surprised Mary. You thought about Anna? Of course. What's the point of solving the financial problem if we create other problems? Anna tugged on Robert's suit sleeve. Mister, does that mean I get to spend more time with Mommy? It means your mum won't have to work 3 jobs and nearly pass out from exhaustion anymore. Just then, Mrs. Johnson intervened. Mary, there's something you need to know. Mr. Marcus is spreading rumors about you and Robert. Robert frowned. What kind of rumors? He's saying that Mary is prostituting herself to get money. Robert's expression hardened. And who is this Marcus? He's a man who tried to assault me last year, Mary explained, ashamed. When I refused, he got angry. And now he's trying to ruin your reputation. The rumors might get back to you from other people, and I wanted you to hear the truth from me first. Robert looked at Anna, who was following the conversation with worried eyes, then back at Mary. The truth is that a mother is fighting to raise her daughter with dignity. The rest is just jealousy from people who can't do the same. You don't care what people will say? Mary, I'm a 52-year-old man who has never cared about anyone but himself. If people want to talk badly about me now because I'm finally trying to help someone, that's their problem. Anna smiled for the first time that day. You really are a good man. I'm not a good man, Anna. I'm trying to learn how to be one. But Robert didn't tell them about the call he had received an hour earlier. One of his business partners had called to warn him that strange rumors were circulating about his involvement with unsuitable people and that it could affect his reputation in business circles. The mogul was beginning to understand that helping Mary and Anna could have consequences he hadn't anticipated. But when he looked at the little girl hugging the contract as if it were a treasure, he knew he wouldn't turn back. What he didn't know was that Mr. Marcus had done much more than spread rumors. He had called every contact he knew in the business world, planting seeds of suspicion about Robert Miller's true motivations, and those seeds were about to sprout in a devastating way. A week after the contract was signed, Robert was in his boardroom facing the worst professional crisis of the last 10 years. Seated around the table were his three main partners, all wearing the grave expressions he knew all too well. "Robert, we need to talk about the rumors," said Charles Mendoza, the most senior partner. "They're affecting our credibility in the market." "What rumors, specifically?" Robert asked, though he already knew the answer. "That you're having an inappropriate relationship with an ex-convict," replied Sandra Vance, the only woman in the group, "and that you're using company money to support her." Robert felt his anger rise, but he kept his voice calm. "First, I am not in any relationship beyond a professional one. Second, I'm using my own money." "Robert," interjected the third partner, John Peterson, "the issue isn't whether it's true or not. It's the perception it creates." "And what perception is that?" "That you're losing focus on the business, that you're making emotional choices instead of rational ones," Sandra explained. "3 clients have already cancelled meetings this week." Robert felt his stomach clench. "Which clients?" "The Martin Group, Santos Construction, and Almeida Investments," Charles listed. "They all cited restructuring priorities, but we know it's because of the rumors." "And there's more," John added grimly. "The bank is re-evaluating our line of credit for the shopping mall project." That information hit Robert like a punch. The mall project represented the bulk of their projected revenue for the next year. "Did the bank specifically say it was because of the rumors?" "They said they were concerned about the stability of the company's leadership," Sandra replied. "Which means, yes, it's because of you." Robert fell silent, processing the information. In 1 week, his decision to help Mary and Anna had jeopardized the jobs of dozens of employees. "What are you suggesting?" he finally asked. Charles leaned forward. "That you take a temporary leave of absence from your executive role until this situation clears up." "You want to oust me?" "We want to protect the company," Sandra corrected, "and protect you too. If this continues, you could lose everything." "Including the ability to help your little project," John added, with poorly disguised irony. Robert stood up abruptly. "She is not my project. She is an employee." "An employee you hired after knowing her for 3 days, offering a salary 3 times the market rate," Charles pointed out. "How does that look to an outsider?" "It looks like I finally started to care about something other than profit. And it's exactly that kind of talk that's destroying our reputation," Sandra said with exasperation. "Robert, you've always been pragmatic, rational. Suddenly you're an emotional philanthropist? People think you're having some kind of breakdown." "Maybe I am," Robert admitted. "A crisis of conscience." "Conscience doesn't pay salaries or bills," John replied coldly. Robert left the meeting feeling defeated. In his office, he called Mary. "Mary, I need to tell you something. The rumors are affecting my work." "I figured this would happen," she replied, her voice sad. "Do you want me to quit the job?" "No, it's the exact opposite, but I might need to temporarily reduce my direct involvement." "What does that mean?" "It means I might need someone else to supervise your work for a while." "Robert," Mary used his first name for the first time, "you don't have to sacrifice yourself for us. Anna and I survived before. We can keep surviving. I don't want you to survive. I want you to live." On the other end of the line, Mary felt tears in her eyes. "Anna is drawing strange things again." "What do you mean?" She drew you crying, then she drew the three of us separated by a high wall. I think she senses that something bad is going to happen." Robert closed his eyes. "Where is she now?" "At school. But her teacher called me yesterday. She said Anna was very quiet, more than usual, and that she didn't want to participate in the free drawing activity. Why? Because when the teacher asked what she wanted to draw, Anna said she was afraid to draw food because people go away when she draws food." The information broke Robert's heart. Anna had associated her drawings with abandonment. "Mary, I need to see you both. Can I stop by? After school?" "Of course, but Robert, if you keep coming here, the gossip will only get worse." "Let me worry about the gossip." But when Robert arrived at the housing project that afternoon, he found a situation far worse than he expected. A crowd had gathered in front of Mrs. Johnson's apartment, and angry voices echoed through the corridors. "What's going on?" Robert asked a man watching the commotion. "Mary's little girl went missing from school," the man answered grimly. Robert felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean, missing?" "Nobody knows. The teacher said she left during recess and never came back." Robert pushed through the center of the crowd, where he found Mary in a state of despair, being comforted by Mrs. Johnson. "Mary, what happened?" "Anna's gone," she cried between sobs. "The school called and said she walked out during recess and never went back to class." "Have you checked the places she usually goes?" "We've looked everywhere. The school, our apartment, all around here. No one has seen her." Robert tried to stay calm. "Let's think. Where would Anna go if she was scared or sad?" "I don't know." Mary was hysterical. "She's never run. Way before." It was then that Mr. Marcus approached the group with a malicious smirk. "Maybe the girl ran away because she found out what kind of business her mother is in," he commented, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mary turned on him with fury. "Shut your mouth, you bastard! My daughter is lost." "Or maybe," Marcus continued, "someone did something to her because of her mother's dirty dealings." Robert stepped toward Marcus, his fists clenched. "If you don't stop spreading lies, you're going to have a problem with me." "Lies?" Marcus laughed. "Everyone here knows what kind of help you're giving Mary. And now her daughter disappears right when things are heating up." The insinuation was clear and terrible. Marcus was suggesting that someone had done something to Anna because of the situation with Robert. "Are you suggesting someone kidnapped a child because of rumors you spread?" "I'm suggesting that when you play with fire, someone always gets burned, and it's usually not the one who lit the match." Robert was about to lunge at Marcus when Mrs. Johnson screamed, "Look, it's Anna!" Everyone turned to see the little girl walking slowly down the path, alone, with her, notebook under her arm and a lost look on her face. "Anna!" Mary ran to her daughter and hugged her desperately. "Where were you? Why did you leave school?" Anna looked at all the adults around her, then at Robert, and finally at her mother. "I went to draw at the place where I met Mr. Robert," she said in a small voice, "because I wanted to draw a way to make everyone stop fighting." Mary took the notebook from her daughter's hands and opened it to the last page. What she saw made her cry even harder. It was a drawing of Anna, all alone, holding a sign that said, "I will go away so everyone can be happy again." The 6-year-old girl had decided that if she disappeared, the problems her existence was causing would disappear too. And in that moment, Robert realized that his attempt to help had turned into something that was destroying not only his own life, but also deeply traumatizing the very child he wanted to protect. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. The image of Anna walking alone through the project, carrying a drawing where she offered to disappear, haunted him. At 3 in the morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He called his personal assistant. "Charles, I know it's the middle of the night, but I need you to run an urgent search. I want to find my brothers, Edward and Michael Miller. Last I heard of them was 20 years ago in Miami. Sir, now. Pay whatever it takes. Hire private investigators. Do what you have to do. I want to find them before the end of this week." The next morning, Robert went to the Bronx earlier than usual. He found Mary and Anna sitting on their doorstep, the girl drawing while her mother watched with a worried expression. "How is she?" Robert asked. "Confused," Mary replied. She doesn't understand why helping people is causing problems. She thinks it's her fault. Robert knelt beside Anna. "Can I see what you're drawing?" The girl showed him hesitantly. It was a drawing unlike any of the others. Herself in a faraway place, with Mary and Robert on opposite sides of a city, all of them sad. "Anna, can I ask you a question?" She nodded. "If you could choose between having all the food in the world or having the people you love close to you, what would you choose?" The question confused the girl. "But as people go away when I draw food." "Who told you that?" "Nobody told me. I just noticed. When I draw food, bad things happen." Robert understood. Anna had created a tragic connection between her drawings and the problems around her. "What if I told you that's not true? That the problems are because of bad people, not because of your drawings?" "Is that true?" "It's true. Bad people get jealous when good people try to help other good people. But that doesn't mean the help is wrong." At that moment, Robert's phone rang. It was his assistant. "Sir, I've found one of your brothers, Michael Miller. He lives in New York City." Robert's heart pounded. "Where?" "In a working-class neighborhood in Queens. Sir, he also has a young daughter. And according to my investigation, they're facing financial difficulties similar to the family you're helping." The revelation hit Robert like a bolt of lightning. While he was helping a stranger's child, his own brother was raising a daughter in similar hardship. "Can you get me the address?" "It's on its way to your email now." Robert hung up in a state of shock. Mary noticed his expression. "What is it?" "I just found out that my brother, who I lost touch with 20 years ago, has a daughter Anna's age and is going through the same struggles as you." "And is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." That same day, Robert made the most radical decision of his life. He called a meeting with his partners and presented a proposal no one expected. "I want to sell my shares of the company," he announced. The silence in the room was absolute. "Robert, have you lost your mind?" Sandra was the first to react. "Maybe. Or maybe I've finally started to see." "See what?" Charles asked. "That I built a financial empire but destroyed a family. That I accumulated wealth but lost touch with everything that matters. That I became the exact kind of person I hated when I was a child." John rolled his eyes. "This is that woman's fault, and her daughter's." "No," Robert replied firmly. "It's to their credit. They reminded me of who I was before I became this." "And what do you plan to do with the money from the sale?" Sandra asked. "First, I'm going to find my brother and fix the mistake of abandoning him. Second, I'm going to create a foundation to help families in situations like Mary's." "You're going to throw away 20 years of work for sentimentality?" "I'm going to trade 20 years of money for a life with purpose." The partners tried to talk him out of it, but Robert was resolute. That afternoon, the papers were signed. 3 days later, Robert knocked on the door of a modest house in Queens. When the door opened, he saw a man who was almost his reflection, only thinner and with graying hair. "Michael?" The man's eyes widened. "Robert? My God, Robert!" The brothers hugged for the first time in 2 decades, both of them crying. "How did you find me?" "It's a long story. Can I come in?" Inside the house, Robert met Isabel, a sister-in-law he never knew he had, and Luna, his 5-year-old niece who was drawing in a notebook surprisingly similar to Anna's. "What does she draw?" Robert asked, already suspecting the answer. "Food," Michael answered, ashamed. We're going through a rough patch." Robert looked at his niece's drawings. They were identical to Anna's. Detailed plates, full meals, elaborate desserts. "Michael, I want to propose a partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "I have money, but I've lost sight of what's important. You have a family, but you're struggling financially. How about we work together?" "Doing what?" "Helping other families who are in the situation you're in right now." Michael looked at his wife, then back at Robert. "You've changed a lot, brother. For the better, I hope." A week later, Robert organized a lunch that would definitively change the course of the story. At the table were himself, Mary, Anna, Michael, Isabel, Luna, and Mrs. Johnson. Anna looked with fascination at Luna, who had also brought a notebook full of food drawings. "Do you draw when you're hungry too?" Anna asked. "I do," Luna confirmed shyly. But we won't have to draw food anymore, Anna said with the wisdom of her recent experiences, because Uncle Robert found out that when people really help each other, everyone is happy. Robert watched the scene, moved. There was plenty of food on the table, but what touched him most was seeing Anna sharing her snack with Luna, teaching her to draw, things other than food. "Mary," he addressed Anna's mother, "I want to propose something different from what we agreed on." Mary tensed. "What?" "Instead of you working for me, how about we work together? Me, you, Michael, and Isabel. A project to help families in vulnerable situations." "What do you mean?" "A foundation that identifies children in situations like Anna's and Luna's, children who draw food because they're hungry, and offer comprehensive support to their families." Michael leaned forward. "And how would it work?" "You and Isabel would handle the operations, visiting families, identifying needs. Mary would handle the direct relationships with the children and mothers. I would provide the initial funding and manage the administration." "And our daughters?" Isabel asked. "They'd be part of the process. Anna and Luna could help other kids understand that they're not alone." Anna looked at Robert with admiration. "You want me to help other kids who draw food?" "I want you to show them that it's possible to stop drawing food because you're hungry and start drawing food because you love it." The girl smiled and opened her notebook to a fresh page. She began to draw quickly. When she finished, she showed it to everyone. It was a drawing of a huge table with many children sitting around it, all eating and smiling. In the center of the table it was written, "Nobody draws hungry here." "This will be the symbol of our foundation," Robert declared, his voice thick with emotion. 6 months later, the Anna Claire Foundation had already identified and helped 50 families facing food insecurity. Robert had found a purpose he never imagined possible. Michael and Isabel had completely reconciled with their brother, forming an extended family that supported one another. Mary had become one of the project's lead coordinators, using her own experience to identify and help other struggling mothers. But the biggest transformation had happened in Anna. The girl who once drew food out of hunger now taught other children to draw hope. Her notebooks were filled with smiling faces, reunited families. And yes, there was still food in her drawings, but now they were shared meals, not lonely dreams. At the inauguration of the Foundation's headquarters, Anna was invited to speak. She climbed onto the small stage holding her oldest notebook and her newest one. "I used to draw food because I was very hungry," she said in her clear voice, "but I found out that being hungry for food hurts less than being hungry for love. Now I draw people together because I learned that when people come together to help, nobody has to be hungry for anything." In the audience, Robert held Mary's hand as he watched the little girl who had changed his life forever. Beside them, Michael and Isabel smiled proudly, and dozens of families who had been helped by the Foundation applauded emotionally. When Anna finished her speech, she symbolically tore the first page from her old notebook, the one where she had drawn the man alone in the restaurant, and handed the pieces to Robert. "Now you don't have to keep drawings of loneliness anymore," she said, "because we're a real family." Robert hugged the little girl, knowing she was right. The lonely mogul who once accumulated wealth without purpose had been transformed into a man surrounded by love and meaning. And it had all started with a child who drew food because she was hungry. Now, Anna still drew food. But she drew banquets where everyone was included, meals where no one was left out, bountiful tables where the most important thing wasn't the amount of food but the amount of love being shared. And Robert learned that sometimes saving a child is just the beginning. The real miracle happens when that child teaches you how to save yourself.